We will now look at the problem approach to writing the introduction chapter of your dissertation. There is a problem that needs to be addressed. You are the superhero to save the day. Your dissertation will attempt to solve the problem, or at least address the problem. A research problem is a clear statement about an area of concern or a condition to be improved upon or a difficulty to be eliminated or a troubling question that exists in the scholarly literature. This is the layout of the problem approach for the introduction chapter of your dissertation. The first section, the opening paragraphs. This is where you provide relevant background information. After this, the second section, this is where you describe the problem. After this, you postulate what led to the problem. After this, you describe what is currently being done to tackle the problem. Number 5, you postulate what happens if the problem is left unexamined. If the problem is left unaddressed, what could possibly happen? What are the consequences for this? And number 6, you explain how your study addresses or alleviates the problem. We'll go through each of these 6 sections in more detail. Number 1, the opening paragraphs of your introduction chapter. The first paragraphs of the introduction chapter should give relevant background information to your topic. Here is an example. This student looked at the efficacy of workplace coaching to improve mental well-being. So he provided some relevant information about the efficacy of workplace coaching to improve mental well-being. You have to imagine that the person reading your work, the person marking your work, does not know what you mean by your terms. So he defined efficacy. This is crucial background information. Efficacy can mean many things, so he needed to define it. Workplace coaching, what is that? We need some background information, so he defines it. Do not assume that the reader or the marker is aware of your terms. Mental well-being is a broad term, is a vast term. What does he mean by this? He needs to define what mental well-being means in the context of his dissertation. He also shows how mental well-being relates to workplace coaching. Notice that all the background information that he provides is from the literature. The more you reference, the better this chapter will be. Reference, reference, reference as much as possible. You will never be penalized for over-referencing, but you will be penalized for under-referencing. Number 2, describe the problem. After the opening paragraphs, you need to describe the problem. Explain why the problem is detrimental. Why is the problem unsafe? Why is the problem unsustainable? Why is the problem contradictory? Why is the problem inconsistent? You may state the problem, but it's not clear to the marker why it is a bad thing. So you need to make sure that it is very clear why it is a terrible thing. Provide evidence from the literature why this problem is detrimental. Also, who is it detrimental to? A problem isn't a problem for everyone. For instance, COVID-19 restrictions has caused you to study from home. This is a problem, but it is not a problem to everybody. Some students prefer to study from home. Some lecturers prefer to teach from home. Provide evidence of who this problem impacts. Perhaps evidence of the impact on a particular target group. Provide evidence of how prevalent the problem is. Provide evidence of how widespread this problem is. Number 3, after you have described the problem, you need to postulate what led to the problem. Which specific occurrences or contextual factors led to the problem? This problem did not emerge out of nowhere. There is nothing new under the sun. What led to its present state? Please do not delve too deep into history, but put forward from the literature relevant factors or conditions that led to the problem. Also, I would always put more than one factor. I would postulate several factors. You may be right, you may be wrong. So protect yourself with multiple reasons. It will show the marker that you have read widely and considered many things. After you have described what led to the problem, you need to describe what is currently being done to tackle the problem, to address the problem, to alleviate the problem. If this is a problem like you stated, something must be happening to address this problem. It is unlikely that you are the only person in the entire world that has identified this problem. Which academic or practitioner articles have addressed this problem? Who has discussed this problem? What did they say about this problem? Has there been any legislation? Has there been any regulation? Has there been any policy to alleviate this problem, to address this problem? Ultimately, you have to state subtly that not enough is being done, or that there is little significant impact to the problem. Because if everything was fine and the problem was being solved, then you wouldn't write about it. If the solutions were well developed, or the government was eradicating the problem, then this would take away from the rationale of your research. This will take away from the significance of your research. If the problem's being solved, then why are you getting involved? In the rarest of cases, if the problem is not being addressed or discussed, why is this the case? You now have to explain why you have to address the problem. What is the rationale for your research? What is the significance of your research? What is driving your research to solve this problem? Perhaps you may argue that voices, experiences remain unheard and unshared if you do not document them. Perhaps the prevalence of the problem continues to increase if no solutions are put forward. Maybe the problem is at odds with certain ideals or principles. There is a contradiction here. Perhaps ineffective interventions to the problem will continue if no solutions are put forward. Number 6, the last section of the introduction chapter of your dissertation. In this last part, you will explain how your study addresses or alleviates the problem. To do this, I would use the aims and objectives or research questions. I prefer aims and objectives because it makes your plan very clear and very concise. It's also a good way to show your supervisor your intentions, your plan of the project. It gives them a quick snapshot of your dissertation. They can also help you perfect and improve your aims and objectives, and this will help you perfect and improve your overall dissertation. A way to do the aims and objectives for this problem approach is to think about the aim. The aim is essentially your central research question without the question mark. The central aim of your dissertation. You would write the central aim of your dissertation. And a good objective to have, if you say there is a problem, maybe an objective that you need to think about is looking at the prevalence of the problem. So objective 1 would be around this. Objective 2, maybe there are certain factors that led to the problem. So maybe this would need to be discussed. Objective 3, what are the consequences if this problem is left unaddressed? And number 4, perhaps at the end of this, to address the problem, you want to put forward something. You want an end product, a framework, or maybe an intervention, or a model, or theory, or recommendations to address the problem. Here is what the problem approach could look like on paper. Here are the 2 approaches to the introduction chapter of your dissertation. You can choose either the gap approach or the problem approach, or you can combine both, or maybe you have some other sections in mind after a discussion with your supervisor or something that you've read. You can add to this. And I just want to leave on this note. Absorb what is useful from this presentation, discard what is not, and most importantly, add what is uniquely your own. You're free to mix and match these templates. These templates are not set in stone. You're free to do what you want with them. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys soon.